Shananotam Shinivashananda Purutrai ki Shri Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki Shri Rupa Shri Sanatana Bhattaragan Shri Jiva Gopala Bhattadas Ragna Shat Goswami Prabhu ki Shri Shri Namarayana Shri Gaura Parashad Vindaki Namacharya Shri Das Thakur ki Prem Sikho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktavinda ki Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki Kumbha Devi ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Bhakti Devi ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kundakiri Govardhana ki Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Shri Devi ki Shrimati Purnamasi Bhagavati Yogamaya ki Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Gopi Shwar Mahadev ki Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakrachetra Dantota Gopinath ki Braj Dham ki Bhakta Pravara Prahlad Maharaj ki Anand Koti Vaishnava ki Samagata Bhaktavinda ki Sintai Gaur Premanande
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Lakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vansha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tishe Nama Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalo Kalmashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jayatam Suruto Pangor Mama Mandamater Gati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadha Srimad Radhanagar Singhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Preshtali Sevyamano Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Vam Shivata Tatakstita Karshana Venu Swanair Gopir Gopinata Shri Stuna Brindai Tulsi Devyai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Das Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Ashtatara Shata Sri Srila, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. And then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat pranams and Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asta Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And then I'm offering my same Dandavat pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga. And then I'm offering my Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. Yes. Don't need that. It's the wrong one anyway. The wrong gong. The wrong gong. Hare Krishna. So today I read for like 2 hours straight through from where we were left off, all the way to the point where now Hiranyakashipu is telling them kill him. So I got a really good dose of Prahlad Charitra today. Read all the purports, everything, including the 13-page purport. The one of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. And, but one thing that I'm thinking and feeling, guess it hasn't come to the willing stage yet, but with the festival just around the corner, because today is the second or third? Today is the third, right? And the first day is the 14th of the festival, correct? So that means it's 11 days away, right? 11 days away. And I was thinking as a warm-up for the festival, because the festival is a very, one-pointed focus on Srila Gurudev, especially this year, 100th anniversary and all, and our first festival with the big gap that we just went through. And so I was thinking of some topic that is more closely related directly with Srila Gurudev's preaching and giving a slight rest to Prahlad Charita, which we will continue, for sure. I'm going to complete the whole thing. But that's what I'm feeling right now, is that would be very favorable. What do you think? I wanted to put it to all the devotees. And also, anyone can suggest, which topic. I have a few ideas in my mind, but I think can suggest.
I think we should just follow your inspiration, because that's going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, but I also want to know from the devotees if they had some particular...
You mean a particular aspect of Srila Gurudev?
No, I mean particular book, topic, lecture, this, that, to go over. And like I said, I had a bunch of ideas, but...
No, I won't go to that.
I was just going to ask, what was the first book published in English besides the Vrindavan curriculum book, but the first book published in English?
That's Venugit.
That's what I meant. So, yeah.
Yeah, the Venugit. That's a suggestion from your side. Not a bad suggestion. Actually, who was showing it to me recently and asking me about it? Yeah.
It was the first book we read in Shinto.
It's the book that I edited. I was telling the whole story.
Right.
It was to you that I was telling that, right? Yeah. So that because there's two versions. The second Venugit was published, I don't know how many years later, but a little bit later, because the Hindi-speaking devotees requested Gurudev, because he did his Venugit in Hindi. He did it after the English one.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. He did it after the English one, and there's, so much more is there. But I would say most of it he covered in the first one. Because it was his personal classes that he was giving. You know where it came from? The first one, those lectures, the English lectures. Satsvarup Maharaj. He was giving those to him. Right? Yeah. That was around like 1991. So that manuscript was typed out from the recordings, you see. So his English needed some help at that time. And then a few more years went by where he was also speaking a lot, and then this one came out in 1995. So yeah, anyway, that's a nice idea, the Venugit. I was actually thinking that we should go over the 5 songs of the gopis in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But that would take a lot more, 11 days. Yeah.
Gurudev Tatma.
Gurudev Tatma. That was the lectures in Australia. I think that was around, it was around the time of Gurudev's Vyas Puja, those lectures. Any other?
I always liked Gurudev's, the book Secret Truths of the Bhagavatam, when Gurudev spoke Bhagavatam. I mean, he spoke Bhagavatam here so many times, so it's really nice, but that book is so sweet, and Gurudev gave all those lectures here, so
Right.
it's also kind of special.
That's true. I was thinking of that too. That was one of the books I was thinking about.
Yeah, also in the back, there's things he said at people's homes. So that's very personal.
In the back of...
In the back of that book,
Oh.
Secret Truths of the Bhagavatam. There's a talk he gave at Govinda Balls about Yasomati Nanda.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Nice. We should do both. Actually, I'm satisfied with both of those suggestions. Maybe we should start with Secret Truths of the Bhagavatam, because it's the lectures he gave here. Which year was that? That was the second year that was published? 98.
It was 98, the lectures.
It was his third visit here.
Yeah, I think.
His third visit, yeah. And then that book was produced from those lectures, right? Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't mind how long it takes, because no matter what we do, probably wouldn't finish it, but just to go in that direction and hear all those tattvas.
You could try to finish with Raslila, the last chapter, which I think is Raslila.
Is it?
Gurudev always said he liked
Yeah.
to finish with that.
One of the books I was also thinking of is Ras Panchadhyay. It was movement, something like that. There wasn't a specific book. Isn't that true,
Yeah.
Jago?
Yeah, it was just like
Did they discuss it? Who chose the topic?
I think it was more like Mahaprabhu's preaching mission and how kind of like that, like how to preach, how to follow Mahaprabhu's teachings and how to imply those in our sangha.
Okay.
How to, like more like
Yeah.
the Harinam Sankirtan. Yeah.
And that was Nishinga who kind of suggested that.
I think so.
Yeah.
And, yeah. It wasn't like a topic like.
You know, the last few years we had just a particular book topic, you know. But what I'm feeling for this festival, because there's such a gap, and I think that it would be nice to kind of have free reign for the speakers to, not necessarily like we can select a general topic, kind of like that, you know, but let the speakers decide rather than choosing a book. I thought it was a little bit too formal, especially the last festival with Brihad Bhagavatamrita. That devotee, you know, unless somebody has really thoroughly read through the whole text of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and you know, so it was just kind of like a repetition every day. Everyone was kind of just giving a summary of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita without really getting into the topic and the substance, you know. So that's what I'm thinking regarding the topic of the festival. That can be discussed, of course. But I like the idea how they did the program there in Florida, you know. You know, and they gave each speaker a certain amount of time. I like that much, much better, especially this year. You know, so well, I think Secret Truths of the Bhagavatam is ready to be read by us in the library.
I can go get one.
And if not, I got my iPad here.
Good job, Krishna.
I'm seeing Gopi Geet over there with the pink cover.
That's what first came to mind.
Huh?
That's what first came to my mind.
Why?
When I think of Srila Gurudev, that's just kind of what comes to my mind. Automatic.
The book or the topic or what? Have you read that book?
Portions of it, but I haven't sat down and read the whole thing. Just intermittently and during Katha.
Mm. Yeah, that topic is quite high. And I'm a little reluctant to cover that.
Which topic?
Gopi Geet. Not that I wouldn't, but just that who has the adhikar? This is my point. There might be some that are coming a little bit to that. And of course, just by being exposed to that topic with the commentary of our Gurudev, who is also giving the synopsis of the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, then everyone becomes somewhat purified, of course. But nevertheless, it's very... Oh. And you see this printing. Yeah, those, that hardcover one. Lecture series. Yeah, anyway. Jai Gopi Geet. Jai, all of the Geets. All 5 Geets.
I can only think of 3, Maharaj. I don't remember.
Brahma Geet is the last one. Pranay Geet is the discussion when Krishna first comes, when he calls the gopis and they come. That whole discussion between them. And I'm forgetting the name of the other Geet is when...
Separation.
Yeah, there's... Well, yeah, the gopis are remembering Krishna as he's going cow herding and everything. Jugal Geet. Yes, Jugal Geet. Alright, so Secret Truths of the Bhagavatam. And you know what the subtitle of this is in Sanskrit? Secret Truths of the Bhagavatam?
Rahasya.
Sri Bhagavat Rahasya. Rahasya. Lecture series given in New Braj, Badger, California, June 1999. There you go. All right, so this publication. Print is too small. All right, so I'm just reading the topics. So there's an editor's preface to the second edition. Then there's a section in the beginning portions of the book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now part 1, part 2, and part 3. Part 1, Srimad Bhagavatam classes. Chapter 1 is I meditate on the Absolute Truth. So that would be first verse. So that would be Dharma Prajitavotra Paramo Nirmat Saranam Satam. Third chapter, the process of hearing, Srinvatam Swagata Krishna. Fourth chapter, Krishna and the gopis. Fifth chapter, Krishna leaves Vrindavan. Sixth chapter, the fortune of the gopis to Vrindavan. Now part 2 is an explanation of songs composed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is, first one is Yashamati Nandana, second is Gurudev Kripa Bindudiya, third is Amar Bolite Prabhu, and fourth is Manasa Deha Geo. Then the part 3, entering the process. So we'll just read this editor's introduction so we can understand how this second edition came to be. By the causeless mercy of our beloved Srila Gurudev, Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, we are happy to present to our respected readers a series of 7 lectures he gave at the New Braj community in Braj, June 1999. There, he spoke on the deep meanings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, from the first canto to the 10th, culminating in the inner significance of Sri Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Srila Gurudev explained that each shloka of the Bhagavatam contains many levels of meanings. When, in the association of Krishna, that which is not his native language, he could not share his heart's realizations as easily in English as he could in Hindi, and to make the meanings accessible to a wide range of Western readers, he wanted the lectures carefully edited. Therefore, while preparing this publication, we asked Srila Gurudev many questions for clarification. We also asked his secretary, Sriman Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, and then part 2 consists of his explanation of Gaudiya Vaishnava bhajans. Part 3 is comprised of his morning classes at the homes of the new Braj residents, as well as other topics that he discussed in the evenings before presenting his main point, the secret truths of the Bhagavatam. In his discourses, Srila Gurudev often quoted verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, and although he explained their purports, he did not always translate them. Therefore, after he quoted, we have added the translations, many of which come from Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Compliments of Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. We would like to express our gratitude to the BBT for allowing us to use Srila Prabhupada's invaluable books as references. It was by Srila Prabhupada's request and inspiration that Srila Gurudev preached in the Western countries. Okay. Jai Gurudev. And then Srila Vaman Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. And then Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then Gorkishore Das Babaji and Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And then Mahaprabhu on the ocean front in Puri. And then Sukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. nicely selected. And then Narada Muni, the eternal spaceman. And the first canto first chapter of 10th canto, the birth of Lord Krishna. In the prison house of Kamsa, and then Krishna's childhood pastimes, where he's kicking the cart, Shakatasur. Then Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys, one of my favorite early paintings, how they were all running and playing games, that chapter. Yeah. And then Krishna playing his flute at the Vamshivat and calling the gopis to come. And then one of our old reservoirs. This Bhagavad Purana, probably know the translation, is as brilliant as the sun. And it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali, they shall get light from this Purana. So there was a movie made, another Hare Krishna movie in the early days called As Brilliant as the Sun. You remember that one? Yes. And it had Goparindapal starring as a book distributor in that movie. You don't remember that? Yeah. He's somewhere in LA distributing books. It's on YouTube. Yes, it is. Thank you for telling us. So now, what is I'm trying to remember the Sanskrit for this verse. Puran Narako Udita. Puran Narako Udita. Dharma something. Anyway. So now, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 113, Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada writes in his purport. So the third verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Kalpataror kalitam phalam shukamukad amrita dravasam yutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasikai bhuvi bhavaka. This is from Prabhupada's purport. By submissively hearing this transcendental literature, one can attain the full pleasure of his heart's desire. Nikamakalpataror. That means desire tree of the Vedic literatures. But one must be very careful to hear the message from the right source. Srimad Bhagavatam is exactly received from the right source. It was brought by Narada Muni from the spiritual world and given to his disciple Sri Vyasadeva. The latter, in turn, delivered the message to his son, Srila Shukadev Goswami. And Srila Shukadev Goswami delivered the message to Maharaj Parikshit during the 7 days before the king's death. Srila Shukadev Goswami was a liberated soul from his very birth. He was liberated even in the womb of his mother, and he did not undergo any sort of spiritual training after his birth. Yet, despite his being a completely liberal rasa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is adored by liberated souls who sing Vedic hymns. Times are more attractive to liberated souls than to mundane people. He is of necessity not impersonal, because It is only possible to carry on transcendental rasa with a person. I think this whole next page, this is the purport of Prabhupada. Shri Shri Guru Gauranga, Gandharvika Giri, depicted by Srila Shukadev Goswami. Thus, the sub Goswami, who's not a representative? Yes, he's saying a professional man who makes a business out of reciting the Bhagavatam. Such a man's business is only to earn his livelihood. One should conclude, therefore, that the serious student of the rasa should receive the message of Bhagavatam in the chain of disciplic succession from Srila Shukadev Goswami, who describes the Bhagavatam from its very beginning, and not whimsically to satisfy the mundaner who has very little knowledge in transcendental science. Srimad Bhagavatam is so carefully presented that a sincere and serious person can at once enjoy the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge simply by drinking the nectarian fruit juice through the mouth of Shukadev Goswami or his bona fide representative. End of that quote.
Didn't Vijay Kumar was told to no longer recite Srimad Bhagavatam for money in the Jayavadana?
Mm-hmm.
Chastised.
Yeah. So now the next couple of pages are describing the manifestation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The great sage Vyasadeva, through his transcendental vision, could perceive that upon the dawning of Kali, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, spiritual principles would substantially deteriorate, irreligion would masquerade as religion, and subsequently people would become faithless. He pondered how to benefit all people in this terrible age. He then divided the Veda into 4 to clarify the type of worship that best benefits the varying aptitudes of different types of people. The word Veda means knowledge, or more specifically, knowledge that has come to this world from the Supreme Lord himself. Therefore, the Vedas are timeless and without fault. The Vedas answer questions such as, who am I? How was this world created? Why are we born? Why do we die? Veda has explained everything completely. Not a single question remains unexplained. Just worthy to note, these 4 questions, there's no information given in modern society at all. Can they tell you who you are? Can they tell you how this world was created? No. Can they tell you why we are born? What reason? Why do we die? No. Nothing. No knowledge. So Veda has explained everything completely, and not a single question remains unexplained. Vyasadeva presented the Puranas and Mahabharata, which he compiled from related historical facts that explain the teachings of the 4 Vedas. And they are therefore called the 5th Veda. What's the 5th Veda? Puranas and the Mahabharata. So since the Vedas are vast and they deal with both material and spiritual subjects, Vyasadeva compiled the Upanishads, which comprise solely of transcendental knowledge. In other words, they are the essence and the conclusion of all the knowledge given in the Vedas, the Upanishads. Now, understanding that the intrinsic message of the Vedas and the Upanishads would still be difficult for the common person to grasp, then he wrote Vedanta Sutra. These are aphorisms Aphorism, the word sutra means aphorism, delineating the end, the anta, of all knowledge, Veda. Vedanta Sutra. So Vyasadeva has therefore made extensive endeavor to offer the people of this world knowledge that would help them in the Kali Yuga. But even after compiling Vedanta Sutra, he felt a vacuum. This was not due to his lack of knowledge. He reflected, this may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. At that moment, his spiritual master Sri Narad arrived at Vyasadeva's hermitage. Smiling, Sri Narada asked him why he felt despondent, even after compiling the Vedas, the Mahabharata, and all the Puranas. Vyasadeva asked Narad to reveal the root cause of his sadness to him. Sri Narad explained that Vyasadeva had not described the sweet glories and the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe. Although the Vedic literatures contain information about the Supreme Lord and the path of bhakti, they also present other paths like karma, various levels of pious action, jnana, knowledge of transcendence, and yoga. They also contain many stories of demigods which people without authentic guidance sometimes confuse as pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Moreover, the transcendental pastimes of He who is the source of all incarnations, Sri Krishna in Sri Vrindavan Dham, and Raganuga Bhakti, or spontaneous devotion, which can be performed only to Him, it had not been clearly delineated. Even if such descriptions are faulty from a literary point of view, they can bring about, quote, a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So Sri Narada Muni continued speaking to Srila Vyasadeva. Here's the translation quotes from the 5th chapter of 1st canto, verses 15 and 16. Narada is telling Vyasadeva, whatever you desire to describe that is separate in vision from the Lord, it simply reacts with different forms and names to agitate the mind, as the wind agitates a boat which has no resting place. The people in general are naturally inclined to enjoy, and you have encouraged them in that way, in the name of religion. This is verily condemned and is quite unreasonable. Because they are guided under your instructions, they will accept such activities in the name of religion, and they will hardly care for prohibitions. So this is how Narada Muni began somewhat chastising his disciple, what he's not done correctly. Then Narada went on to describe Srimad Bhagavatam, and that hearing it from realized souls who were devoid of any selfish interest completely transformed his own heart. He informed him that by taking shelter of bhakti, devotion to Krishna, he would be able to describe Krishna's sweet pastimes. Vyasadeva then took shelter of his spiritual master, and by his mercy, he was able to write the Srimad Bhagavatam, the very essence of Vedic literature, the blissful pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Here's a quote. With a pure heart, Sri Krishna Dvaipayana Vedavyas then became absorbed in meditation.
It's probably my phone, I'm sorry.
With a pure heart, Sri Krishna Dvaipayana Vedavyas then became absorbed in meditation through the process of bhakti yoga. He thus saw the Supreme Person, Sri Krishna, along with his external energy, Maya, which was far away from him, but under his control. And due to this Maya, the conditioned living entity forgets his service to Krishna and becomes affected by impediments in spiritual life. Although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, the living entity, bewildered by Maya, considers himself a material product. He thus identifies himself with this body, and he considers that which is related to it to be his. The infinitesimal living entity can only be delivered by Krishna Bhakti Yoga, but the mass of people in the material world are ignorant of this fact. So understanding this, Sri Vyasadeva manifested Bhagavatam through Bhakti Yoga. That's a quote from the first canto, 7th chapter, verses 4 through 6. So now there's a short section, the history of Srimad Bhagavatam, that ends this part in the front of this book. I think what it is this is like a compilation. I don't know, because it doesn't say exactly who's writing it, but I think it was done, because it doesn't even say at the end this is done by the editors or whatever. But I think they're combining Srila Prabhupada's explanations and Gurudev's explanations. Maybe Shamarani, Didi, and some others. Now comes the history of the Srimad Bhagavatam. 5,000 years ago, the most virtuous Emperor Parikshit, grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira, he ruled the entire world. And although he possessed unrivaled opulence, he was free from attachment to it. He was famous as a sage amongst kings, and all were happy under his reign. Even his enemies willingly bowed before him. Yeah, this is, actually it's following the pattern of Srila Gurudev's presentation. I think this has been mostly taken from how Gurudev begins in his festivals introducing the Srimad Bhagavatam, and maybe adding a few more details here and there. So once, while in the forest, by the will of the Lord, tiredness, hunger, and thirst overwhelmed Maharaj Parikshit, and he searched for water. He came upon the hermitage of the great sage Shamik Rishi. The sage was deep in meditation, his eyes closed. Still, the emperor asked him for water. When the sage did not respond or welcome him in any way, the emperor became uncharacteristically angry. The uncommon appearance of such anger in a saintly person is not like the anger of the souls of this world. In this case, its purpose was entwined with a plan that would be of greatest benefit to all humanity. Insulted, the king turned to leave the hermitage, and he saw on the ground a lifeless snake. He picked up the snake, hung it on the shoulder of Shamik Rishi, and returned to his palace. Understanding what had happened, the son of Shamik Rishi, Shringi, burning in anger, used his Brahminical powers to curse Maharaj Parikshit. Here's the verse. Quote, "On the 7th day from today, a snake bird will bite the most wretched one of that dynasty, Maharaj Parikshit, because of his having broken the laws of etiquette by insulting my father." Shamik Rishi, upon learning of the course of events, he was not even slightly disturbed by the behavior of Maharaj Parikshit, and rather he sorely lamented the behavior of his son, but the curse had already been spoken. And although the entire event had taken place by Lord Krishna's desire, so Maharaj Parikshit blamed himself, and he lamented his behavior of insulting the rishi. He desired an immediate reaction so that he would never again be influenced by such inauspicious attitudes. So he was, let it come. And it was in this state of lamentation that Maharaj Parikshit heard of his imminent death, which he wholeheartedly welcomed. He sat on the bank of the Ganges to absorb his mind solely on Sri Krishna. It was not by chance that at the same time, a multitude of the greatest of Munis, those who contemplate the Absolute, arrived at that place with their disciples. Maharaj Parikshit addressed them all, O Brahmanas, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul, and let Mother Ganges, the representative of the Lord, also accept me in that way. For I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird or whatever magical thing the Brahman created bite me at once. I only desire that you all continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. Again, offering obeisances unto all you Brahmanas, I pray that if I should again take my birth in the material world, I will have complete attachment to the unlimited Lord Krishna and association with his devotees and friendly relations with all living beings. He then sat peacefully to fast until death. Turning to the sages, he said, O trustworthy Brahmanas, I now ask you about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just about to die. At that very moment, the most powerful sage of all arrived at that place. He was the son of Srila Vyasadeva himself, Shukadev Goswami. He was only 16 years old, but simply by seeing his astounding features, the sages who were expert in the art of physiognomy, they understood his exalted spiritual status, they immediately rose from their seats. Shukadev Goswami then sat before the king, his charming effulgence pacifying all present. Then Maharaj Parikshit requested him, You are the spiritual master of great saints and devotees. I am therefore begging you to show the way of perfection for all persons, and especially for one who is about to die. Please let me know what a man should hear, chant, and remember, and worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain all this to me. Shukadev Goswami acknowledged the glory of the emperor's question as it benefits all people, and the answer is approved by all those fully situated in transcendence. He thus began to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is famous as the spotless Purana, since its sole purpose is to nourish the soul. By nature, the soul does not have a glimmer of interest in this world. The soul's only function, only interest, and satisfaction are in connecting in service with the Supreme Soul, who is all attractive. The Vedas explain that the name Krishna means all attractive one. The faintest trace of teachings that nurture selfish interest, and thus perpetuate one's existence in this material cycle of birth and death, they are absent from Srimad Bhagavatam. Simply by hearing it faithfully, one attains eternal life. After 7 days, the snake bird manifested and bit Maharaj Parikshit's body. However, because he had heard Srimad Bhagavatam from a pure-hearted saint, Maharaj Parikshit had by then absorbed his consciousness in the spiritual realm left this world. Among those assembled to hear Sukadeva Goswami's narration was Srila Shuta Goswami. And later in the sacred forest of Naimisharanya, powerful sages gathered to perform a sacrifice lasting 1,000 years. And in this setting, Srila Sutta Goswami narrated the Srimad Bhagavatam, the best of all scriptures, to everyone present. And here's the Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarine juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. That's the Nigamakalpataror verse. So this is the prelude, and tomorrow we will begin Srimad Bhagavatam classes with Gurudev in New Braj, Badger, California. Gaur Premanandi. Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Bhavadebhyo Vaishnava.